Indonesia is below the equator, Jakarta, Surabaya, where we went. If you cross the equator for the first time, going down under, there were some rituals that you went through back then. Calm down, cats. Today, I don't know if they practice this sort of thing anymore. People might complain about hazing and whatever, but I think the Navy started this. Hey, you had to get your shellback somehow. I'm the Saipan sailor, and this is part 4 of Around the World in 70 Days. The world was a different place in the late 70s. Very different from what it is today. And so life on board ship was very different from what it is today. Like I keep saying, this was an old steamship, a C4 class, built after World War II. It had a very large crew and it moved very slowly, maybe 10, 12, 14 knots. I don't know. The unlicensed crew itself was about 35, as opposed to today where the ships are much larger, they're diesel driven, and there's an unlicensed crew of about 20. So the total amount of people signed on to that particular ship was between 40 and 45. So it was kind of laid back as well. If you had a couple of guys that were slackers or just 1 or 2 steps behind everybody, it was easy to take up the slack most of the time. But we had some characters, including myself. Now, I'll talk about some of the crew on this ship because it was a relatively good crew. There weren't any skirmishes between anybody, no fallouts of any kind. We all got along fairly well. We were only making a 2.5 months trip anyway. There were 2 fellas that were in the deck department. They worked outside on deck. These guys were garlic freaks. They ate garlic all day, every day. And they ate it raw. So not only did they smell like it, their clothes smelled like it, the passageway smelled like it. They were putting the room together, okay, so the room smelled like it. And when they washed their clothes, the washing machine smelled like it. Now, and you couldn't get that smell out. Not with chlorine bleach, nothing. It just would not come out. So if you had to wash your clothes, you knew your clothes were going to smell like garlic too. And that was disgusting. And those wash machines back then, if you sailed when I did back then, you would know that there were nothing more than a tub with an agitator and a water tap. Filled it up with water, put your soap in there, put your clothes in there, turned it on, and it would agitate. And you let it agitate for as long as you needed to. They drain the water after you shut it off, fill up with water again, rinse the soap out. Once you got the soap out, then you flicked a fulcrum lever that would engage this gear that would turn the wringer, which was a pair of rollers on top of the tub. And you would feed your clothes through there and wring your clothes out. That's how we washed our clothes back then. That was a trip. But there's another fella I want to tell you about because we all love this guy. But, well, let me call him Ivan, okay? Now, I knew Ivan before I got on this ship, but I didn't know him well enough. At least not as well as I did one at the end of that trip. Ivan was my classmate earlier that year in the wintertime in maritime school. We were taking engineering courses together with about 20 other guys in the class. And we were there for about 3 months. And I remember after about a month or in about 2 months in the school, we never see this guy, only during class, in the classroom, and then the cafeteria during the meal hours. That's it. He wouldn't go to the bar with us and drink. He wouldn't go out to the clubs with us. Wouldn't go out on weekends to the seafood house. We never seen him. So his roommate, we asked his roommate, what is with this guy? He said he sleeps all the time, and that's all he does. Now we all passed the course, but Ivan, he slept through it. Well, Ivan was an oiler. Now I want to explain these old steamships, okay, and how things were down below. Each watch had 3 people on watch: an engineer, an oiler, and a fireman. Now the oiler was more or less the engineer's gopher, okay. He kept an eye on everything for him and did whatever the engineer told him. The fireman was different. He had to maintain the boilers, and if you were the fireman, you had to know what you were doing, and you had to be on your toes all the time, especially when they were maneuvering in and out and transiting or tying up or letting go. You'd have change of speeds, and the steam demand would change and all. I don't want to go through all the details, but being a fireman was an art back then. Well, after a few days on the ship, I noticed the firemen, those guys, Ivan and his watch partner, they had the 4 to 8 watch, which meant dinner time was on their watch. So anytime there's a meal, they always fed the guys either going on watch or the guys that were already on watch first, so they could eat and get out of there, and then they fed the rest of us. On those ships we had a messman who was basically a waiter. Well, I noticed the fireman would come up and eat dinner and scram. He'd be there 5 minutes, but he'd wolf it down or sometimes take it with him and head right back down below. I finally asked him, I said, what's your hurry? See, what would happen normally is the oiler would relieve the fireman. It depended on what the chief engineer wanted. Or they would call another oiler or another fireman from a different watch to relieve those guys so they could eat. On this ship, the oiler would relieve the fireman. He would go eat and come back, and then the oiler would go eat. Well, I asked the fireman, what's your hurry? Didn't Ivan relieve you? And he looked at me kind of strange and shook his head and said, oh, no. We don't let him touch anything down here. And off he went back down below. I had to think about that. Apparently, he relieved the fireman once or twice, and something happened while he was eating, or something was about to happen. They caught it in time and they realized that Ivan didn't have a clue what was going on down there. He was oblivious, and he was not a multitasker. I felt sorry for the guy. I really did. He was quiet. He was the sweetest, purest angel you ever met. I mean, if you told him you needed a hand with something, he would probably chop his off and give it to you. That's just the kind of guy he was. Well, when we got to Hawaii, after we left Hawaii, actually, I was to find out just how pure Ivan was. And I'll tell you about that in the next episode. I took a little bit too much time in this one. Uh, don't forget, hit the like button, like and share, hit the subscribe button, ring the bell. Well, you know the drill. I want to wish you all clear skies and calm seas. I'm the Saipan Sailor, and this was part 4 of Around the World in 70 Days.